let's start with some introductions. Amy, let's start with you.
Okay. I am a licensed clinical social worker. This is my 21st year as a social worker, and it is my 15th year as a clinical social worker, which makes me feel really, really old. But I have specialized in trauma. I worked a lot in child welfare the early on part of my career. And so as I worked in trauma work and I did all of those things, I learned about psychedelics and I saw the effects of psychedelics. And so I made it my mission the last 5 years to really learn a lot about psychedelics and to try to figure out how to integrate this healing medicine into people's lives because it really does work.
I love that. Thank you, Amy. Mindy, tell us about you.
Well, my name is Mindy Vincent. I am also a licensed clinical social worker and have been for 13 years. And I am the founder and executive director of the Utah Harm Reduction Coalition. I'm also the owner of Life Changes Counseling, which is a private mental health group practice. I am a person who's recovered from a substance use disorder. I have a little over 18 years free from addiction. And throughout my career, I've worked with people who struggle with substance use, mental health, which trauma is very deeply embedded in that as well. And through my own personal experiences, I've been engaged with psychedelics since I was 12 or 13 years old, and through my personal experiences. And then to see it emerge throughout my professional career as the medicine that I knew it was when I was 13 years old has been magical, honestly. And my goal in working with in psychedelic spaces is one, obviously, to help people, but equally as important to me, maybe even more important to me, is helping to make sure that those spaces are safe and appropriate, especially in the realms of who is doing what and how that's laid out, because we're working with very vulnerable people. And as a professional, I'm not their peer. I'm a professional, and it is my job to ensure that people are safe in my space. So I'm very passionate about that, and I'm super grateful to get to be here.
Awesome. Take note of that because if I don't bring it up in a future in a question, I want you to talk about that a little more, if you would.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I will. It's the thing that sometimes people don't agree with me on, though. It's the thing that sometimes gets people spicy with me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't care because I
I,
believe in what I say. So I'll continue to say the same things.
I think we have a lot in common, Mindy. I'm
You
excited.
mean we just might, and I'm looking forward to that. Like, I need more allies on my side, you know?
Let's
Well,
well, yeah,
yeah, let's talk about that. Keep
let's
going.
Yeah.
figure that out. You right? Let's have those conversations. Okay. So one of my first questions for you is when you're working with a client and they tell you either an existing client who is saying, "Hey, I think I want to try psychedelics." I want to know how you help prepare them for that experience. Do you encourage it? Do you discourage it? What kind of questions do you ask them to get them ready? And then let's answer that. So first, let's start with the preparing for someone. If someone says, "Hey, longtime client, and I think I want psychedelics." What do you do? Mindy, why don't you go first on this?
Well, I have clients, sometimes they're my first time client, and they're like, hey, I came here because I want to do psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. But especially long-term clients, I already know them better. So I feel like I understand or can see better whether they're appropriate for psychedelics, because not everyone is appropriate for psychedelics, and that is just a fact. And there are many people that I have seen come to me that, kind of my rule of thumb is if you cannot manage your emotions and your trauma in sober skin, you certainly will not be successful in psychedelic skin. We do not live in a psychedelic universe. We live here in this dimension. And if it were all about just taking a trip, I would have changed the whole world when I was 13 years old, right? And that is not what it's about. So, one of my first things is recognizing how people even manage their distress and their emotions right now, today. And if they struggle with emotion regulation or distress tolerance, I start working on those skills with them first. And I explain that to them. I tell them, like, imagine how you're feeling right now. Now let's toss you in a swimming pool full of ice water. Do you feel like that's going to help? I mean, actually, if somebody's really distressed, it would, because it's a DBT skill. But ultimately, like, you don't want to enhance something somebody's already going through. And this is where I struggle with some people who administer medicine because they don't know how to deal with somebody who's experiencing trauma. They don't have skills to de-escalate them, and they're just handing it out and letting these people participate in ceremony when these people don't even have the skills to manage themselves in sober skin.
Yeah.
So on some people, I do a full biopsychosocial. And then we talk about what are the skills you have, your de-escalation techniques for yourself. What are you hoping to get? Because that's the other thing too, is a lot of people are like, I want to take psychedelics because it's the answer. It's like psychedelics aren't the answer.
One and done. I want to fix one thing and take the magic pill and be done.
Yes, and it's like psychedelics are they're not the answer. If anything, they bring about more questions. The goal of psychedelics is to help change your mind to be able to see things in a different way, from a different perspective, to learn to accept things otherwise you haven't been able to accept, which brings us, peace and solace in our lives. And so explaining to people what can be done and what can't be done, and then reminding them we don't live in that universe, we live here. So it doesn't matter what you learn or what you take from there if you aren't able to bring it back here and apply it in real life.
I love that, Mindy. Thank you. That's actually really good. Amy, how do you deal with it when a client comes to you?
Well, as I've evolved in some of my ways of managing these issues in a spiritual way versus like a capitalist mental health way slash therapist way, however you want to look at that, I think some of the things have shifted. So first of all, I tell people right away, if they come to me and they're like, I want to do psychedelic experiences, I tell them right away that you can be a part of like this community over here that's a religion and get that safety protection here. You can go to this other way of getting some safety protections through a religion, but like I make a clear distinction about our roles as a community member that focuses on the religious use of psychedelic medicine versus a therapeutic use. Do you want to see me as a therapist, or do you want to like work in this community field? Because it can't be both for me.
Interesting.
So I think in terms of preparing someone, if they come to me and they say, I want to use you as a therapist, then we talk a lot about psychedelics. I make sure that they've done some research, like more than just like hearing about it from a friend or, whatever. They've done some research about that. So if they haven't, then I encourage them to go and learn on their own. I'm very much about not telling them what I know or my wisdom or the things that come from me, but this is coming from an outer source, from knowledge that are people way smarter than me, and then encouraging them to become their own healing person. So that's like the first step in becoming your own healing person and what that looks like. And then I encourage them to find a friend or family member that they really trust and someone that knows how to help them regulate emotions. I love that, Mindy. Regulating emotions and distress tolerance are essential for this type of work.
Yeah.
If you're in a place that you're like totally upset and you don't even know how to breathe, wow, that the psychedelics are going to be hard for you and maybe not teach you, but traumatize you or re-traumatize you, which I do think is something that can absolutely happen in these medicines.
No question.
Yeah. So in my mind, finding out what they want to achieve. Are they looking for a miracle or are they looking for hard work? Because this is hard work.
Yes. Amy, I love you already. I just love you. Please continue.
Yeah.
Me.
I hold up the space that having rituals and ceremonies and all of that to hold the energy of the experience. Beautiful, wonderful, but not the thing. That is not what is healing people.
I
Like,
completely
I've heard,
agree.
Right? The feathers and the incense are not the cure.
And
Well,
they're awesome. For some
they're
people,
lovely.
that enhances it. It's really
Yes.
lovely. But
rituals are amazing.
And
Rituals are
yeah.
wonderful. But like
Yes.
you're not gonna
Not the
wave
hard
your
work.
arm hand over my heart and like spin around something and pull it out, and then all of a sudden my trauma is gone. That's unrealistic.
yeah,
So I think that's how I prepare people is that like where have you gotten your information? What's your safety plan? Who's going to hold this space for you? Because in my mind, the further away that you are in terms of trust, the more likely you are to get harmed. And
Yes.
so
Yep.
I mean, I've heard of people just showing up to a room full of strangers, and then there's just all this energy that of people you don't know, can't trust,
Yeah.
and it really causes harm for some people. I mean, I've heard of other ceremonies going wonderful. I'm not saying that ceremonies and groups are bad, but I do think the further away that we get from trust in an experience, the more likely you are to have an experience that doesn't help you but is hurtful.
Yes.
It happened when your brain was made of elastic, right? This trauma thing happened when your brain was elasticized and now it's stuck in there. I've had some significant work with people trying to deprogram the things that they got from some of these experiences.
Yes.
Like, and that's been really a challenge to watch and to not, I think you and I share some similar things, to not cry out and be like, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah. Can I ask Amy a question?
Sure.
Sure.
You said in the beginning, Amy, that you asked them right away, what role is it you're looking for me to play? Like, are we looking at me as are you wanting me as a therapist? Or are you wanting me as a community member that is in this community? And how do you distinguish between what those things are for you? I mean, in my mind, I feel like I have it pretty clear, but like,
Well, I mean, over here, I have what I do for a living, which is a therapist, and you're on my calendar. I get money for you. Like we don't interact. When I see you at the store, I give you like a head bob, right? That kind of a relationship. That's what a therapist client relationship looks like.
yeah,
We don't go to parties together. Sometimes we do. We bump into each other. When we bump into each other, it's like a brief hello, right?
yeah.
That's
You're
what
not
a
going to
client,
the party together. Yeah.
right.
You could run
No.
into each other, but you didn't go together. Yes.
We didn't come together. We're not going to leave together. We do not have a friendship. We
Yeah.
have a client therapist relationship. In my community spaces, I'm a human being. I don't take money there. I am imperfect. I'm going to like be your friend, be the
Yeah.
person that wants to help you understand psychedelic medicine and keeping safe as part of this community base. And our community is just like, it's one of the best I've ever been in. And I'm not saying like, I tell Sarah all the time, I did this on accident. I did not intend to get like a community of around 50 people. I thought maybe five.
Hmm.
It's just it's been an evolution for me to kind of come to that place. But I believe that safety is found in the religious freedom cover. And I encourage people to take the religious freedom cover as opposed to being my client. I've got plenty of clients. I don't need another client, to be honest. But over here is a community that can help you with safety, help you with integration, help you with like all sorts of things. And you can only get this one community at this one place. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of therapists out there who understand how to integrate psychedelics.
Yes. And I will also say, I'm going to jump in on that as a guide. When I have therapists come to me and say, all right, I'm convinced psychedelics are great. How do I start guiding my clients? And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. We need therapists to be therapists, and we
Perfect.
need them not to, have their license challenged. We need guides are those of us who are doing it in a safe way. We can help people through those experiences and then get them back to their therapist, right? And their therapists I work with before that guided session where we're talking back and forth saying, okay, what do I need to know? And of course they've gone through all the right things. The client has signed away they've acknowledged that the therapist can talk to me about certain things, and it just becomes a community of people supporting this person rather than the therapist being the sole person to do all of it. And then again, the therapist isn't put at risk. You're not taking 7 hours of your day. I can't imagine the cost of that, where a therapist, or sorry, a guide is going to be able to do some of that maybe easier and with less risk than some of these therapists. So,
And you're more appropriate. You're
right.
way more appropriate. Sarah, as a guide, there are things when people are under the influence of psychedelics that, they might need to just be held and be able to
Yes.
cry. Things like
Yes.
that. I can't just sit and hold you when you cry. It's
Right.
inappropriate.
Right.
And I love that you said that because I feel so strongly about that. And that is the thing that gets some people like pissed off at me because I think that I think therapists that hold this space as a therapist for people when they're using psychedelics and they charge them these crazy amounts, I think they're financially extorting people. And I also think that they are being completely inappropriate and absolutely unethical. Like I refer my clients to TDA and tell them, go here. This is where you can find a group of people. And I love to collaborate with a guide. And because I can't, I believe in autonomy and autonomy is just a real thing. And so if people want to engage in psychedelics, it would be unethical of me to not help them to be able to do that in a safer way and to help them get what they're trying to get therapeutically out of it. However, it is absolutely inappropriate for me to obtain psychedelics for someone to hold space
Yep.
when they're on psychedelics. But there are safe places. TDA is the only one I know of as well. And sending those people to have a community of people who can answer those questions. And you and Steve have done such a great job of exploring all those caveats and making them very well known through videos and educational things and conferences and all the ways. So people know like these are the safe ways. This is the safe way to access a guide. And then when I get to collaborate with that guide, it's just like collaborating with a case manager. It's
Right.
like these are some of the goals for what they'd like to take from this, and then you're able to do that work with them that's inappropriate for me. There's already a power imbalance with a therapist and a client. And now let's throw psychedelics in there. Are you crazy? That's horrible. I can influence people to do anything. That's nuts. You can't do that. But being able to have someone say, well, this is what came up. This is what we did with it. And then me even being able to give a guide feedback about, in the future, maybe this is something that might be helpful to
Yes.
de-escalate that person or I can warn them ahead of time that like, I think this and this might be an issue because there are these trigger points that I think are going to go back there. Because I can see things like that clients can't see sometimes, because
I
trauma
was,
is very blinding. It
yeah.
restricts our ability to respond. Right. And so there's lots of times I can see things that clients cannot. Plus, I've had lived experience that they might not have.
Well,
You
and
know?
we add a layer of safety because if the client comes back to you, Mindy or Amy, and is saying, my guide had me do X, Y, and Z, that is a total red flag, it's there, you're able to go, oh, no, no, no,
Yeah.
that's not okay. Right?
I think,
It's just one more good layer. Go ahead, Amy.
sorry. I think this is where Mindy and I both agree about like some of this concerning behavior. Like how do we say to someone like, "Oh, that's a really like that's an inappropriate thing that your guide did." Or like even saying to a guide like, "Oh, when you did that, it was actually really like harmful." It makes us feel like, I mean, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, that it makes me feel like I am criticizing people or like trying to make myself better than other people, when really what I feel I'm doing is asking for safety. I'm asking for people to do the things that are meant to be safe. And oh man, I get a lot of harsh feedback from people who don't like the criticisms that I give.
Yeah. Sometimes people don't like my criticisms either, but I don't care. And they are guides and they're not trained worth a shit in the things that I'm trained in. And I don't care. I am the expert and I do know what I'm doing way better than a guide does when it comes to trauma, mental health, psychology, all of it.
I
I am more educated and
Yes.
more experienced in it than they will ever be.
Yeah.
And they should take my feedback because if they give a shit about what they're doing for people, they should seek people who know better than them to help them do it properly. These guys dig and they look to find, like, okay, what is the most appropriate thing to do? What's not appropriate to do? What's a
Right.
way I could better support this person who's seeking this? How do I do this without triggering somebody? What's something I can do with this person if they should behave this way? How do I help them get through that? Right? Some people are like, oh, psychedelics, I just found them when I was 45 and they're the answer to everything. No, for those of us who have taken them all of our lives, we know that that's a phase and you'll get past it. Like Steve went through that phase. And I was like, Steve, It can be harmful. But when he first did them, he was like, no, they're the best. They're for everybody. I was like, no, they're not. And now Steve is the first person to tell you psychedelics can be harmful, full stop. I've heard him say it 1,000 times. Right. And so, yeah. Oh,
Well,
I
let
feel
me
real
ask
tough about
this.
that.
Let me ask this, Mindy, because thank you for being a big cheerleader for me and Steve. That's
You guys
thank
are the
you.
best.
But there are a lot of people that are going to be watching this who
Yes.
don't come from Utah, who don't have access to this community. So
That's sad.
put your, it is sad. They should all move here.
They
But
all
put your,
I'm going to talk about home church. I'm going to interrupt
chapters.
because,
okay, hang on. Let me
hey,
answer first. And then, yes, I want to hear about home church. But then I also want to hear about if you're talking to a therapist in the Midwest who has a client who's kind of on their own and growing their own mushrooms and figuring things out, what are some things we can do to help that therapist provide the support needed that they might not get in this community here because we've brought everything up out of the basements. So Amy, you first, and then Mindy, we'll have you go next.
so I think about those people who don't have access to this in-person community. I'm going to remind like how TDA has made some shifts into looking at encouraging people to set up their own places of worship and having home churches. And so honestly, like I said earlier, I accidentally started this chapter. It was me and one other person that I met at the Salt Lake TDA, and I said, why don't you come down? We'll do something small here or there, and we can have the protections of the religious thing if we're meeting together as a group, because wherever two people are meeting, that's a group. It's big enough. So, but home church is like even your family or other religious worship that you're doing to provide you with the religious aspects of things. And in terms of accessing our communities, I think we're doing a great job of bringing more virtual things into our spaces. And also, they're like we have a resource guide that's just available for people that you can learn about all sorts of things related to psychedelics, and it gets changed all the time and updated. I know you guys have resources. So, really all it would be is a reach out to either Steve and Sarah or Sarah Call or myself about how to start a church, and we'll tell you how. And
Yeah.
it's not that hard.
Yeah.
So the religious protections can apply to anyone in the United States
Yeah.
Yes.
through TDA. Okay. Thank you for that. And now, what if they want to keep it therapeutic? They're going to worship at home by themselves, a small group, but then they're going to go to their therapist, and their therapist is saying, I don't know much about psychedelics at all. How do I support this person?
Dude, the therapy itself has nothing to do with psychedelics.
Talk more about that.
Has nothing to do with it. And I can't help but think, like, Sarah, there's a job to be done now. Hearing you say, like, people don't have communities elsewhere. We know that there's people who are already communing
Oh,
with their higher being in this way in other places. We just got to get them linked.
they've
We
got to
just got to
find
get them
each other.
linked in, right?
Yeah.
But the therapy, like the assessment of preparing somebody for psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, is no different than preparing them for work in EMDR or, internal family systems or something.
Good.
It's like the same thing, right? And then when we're integrating, it's the exact same thing too. Because you know what happens? People go use the psychedelics, they come back, they're like, whoa, dude, this trauma came up. Now what do I do with it? And it's like, well, now we do some EMDR on that. Let's trace it back. Where'd that come from? What triggered you? So the therapy itself is the exact same as the therapy you would do for someone who didn't take psychedelics. Someone who took psychedelics just might have a more open viewpoint. They might be able to shift their view easier, but most importantly, they can find what the root is of it often, right? Because you can see things differently under psychedelics. But that's another important part is if you're doing it for psychedelic reasons, I require people to journal, because when the psilocybin starts to diminish or the substance starts to diminish, that third eye, that's what, I think we all pretty much call it the third eye, it closes back up. You return to normalcy and you can't remember like exactly how you even arrived sometimes at some of these huge epiphanies, right? So like journaling some of those things out. I'm not saying write the whole time that you're under, doing the experience, but jotting those things down, because like you said, Amy, we're here to do the hard work. We're not here for a trip. We're here to do the hard work. And even if you were only using it in a religious context, you're still there to do the hard work, because religion is about getting closer to God, and that all is hard work too.
Yeah, I love that. So that's what I wanted to emphasize. Epiphanies can come from a podcast, a show, a conversation with your mother, a dream, a psychedelic experience. So if the therapist accepts it as a real epiphany or a real insight, and then applies all the tools they have in the toolbox, it's the same thing, right? That's what you're saying. And that's what I was actually hoping you would say, because that's what I think.
It's absolutely true. That's why when therapists are like, well, I don't know that I could do psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. It's like, well, can you do therapy?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's what you need to do, bud. Nobody, and that's why, yet another reason, as a therapist, I don't sit with people when they are taking the medicine, right? They bring back to me what they want to work on. They bring the ingredients. I help them mix up the cookies.
Yeah. And I'm going to say one more thing, Mindy. Since you and I haven't ever worked with a common client, what I do is, as they're coming out of it, I just start taking notes, and it's all on my computer. And they'll say things, and I'm just using their language, right? I don't know who these people are. I don't know what this insight means. But then I've had more than one person. I just send them raw notes, usually 5 to 10 pages. And in some cases, they just forward that straight to their therapist and said, this is the stuff we're going to talk about. And not every guide can do that if you're guiding lots of people at once. But because I do one-on-one, that is something I can offer. And not everyone's chatty, but most chat enough that we pull out a number of insights. And I'll hear them come back to me, and I still have them journal. I still have them, do certain things, but they'll come back to me saying, there are things in here I completely forgot about, even the same day. They
Yeah.
just, and so the fact that I was able to capture that for them allows for a lot more integration, because they're able to cover a lot more topics that they might have forgotten without those notes.
I love that so much, Sarah. And let me just tell you one little thing about that. There were two things about it. One, the fact that you write something, just jot little things down with the client's own words. That's exactly how you make an ideal clinical note or an ideal treatment plan. Like when you're literally putting it quotes around the client said this is what they want. So that is beautiful. And the other thing I was thinking about is how great it might be for someone. So when I'm doing EMDR with someone, and we're doing this desensitizing and the reprocessing, right? They follow the dot for a certain period of time, and then I say, and what are you noticing now? Right. And they just tell me some little tiny snippet. They don't need to explain to me because it's not a processing therapy. So they
Right.
just give me a little snippet, and then the dot goes again, and they are, the brain is doing all the work. And so for you just jotting down those little things for them, that is so similar to like EMDR of like, I don't need a whole explanation, but let me just get this for you and we can come
Because
back and
they'll know.
reevaluate. Yeah. And the
They
brain
know
moves
what they
fast.
meant.
And
They
the
know
brain
their
moves.
memories.
That's right. And the brain moves fast,
Yeah.
and you can't remember all the things. And I love that. And I would love if people had the opportunity to do either or both together, right? Where they're journaling some stuff, because sometimes when people are
Yes.
writing, like it just starts flowing, but also having someone else taking a note, and I just think it's so beautiful that you do that. What a wonderful service
I'm a
and
really good
space you're
guide.
providing for these people. Yes, I love it. And that doesn't surprise me, Sarah, because you're the greatest.
Yeah.
But I love that. And it's so helpful from a clinical standpoint to have a guide that would be doing those types of things. It would make it easier for me to do my job.
Yeah. That's the
So
attempt. Amy.
I'm going to chip in with my thing that I would recommend. I
Okay.
would recommend doing an audio or video recording of the entire experience, loading that into your AI companion, and letting your AI companion summarize themes for you. It also protects the guide and the person participating, because you know exactly what happened. You know what was put into you, you know what was not put into you, and it's right there in black and white, and no one can come back and say, well, that's not what I said. Well, yeah, you did. It's right here.
Right
That's
here.
brilliant, dude. That's
Wow.
brilliant.
Amy, I haven't thought of that. I'm going to have to really think about that.
Yeah.
It's
Some
I
people
very,
might
very
trip out
smart.
about being recorded, though. You should know
Oh,
that. Some people might trip out about
I
that.
use AI as a therapist. I use
Yeah,
AI every single session, and most, like 98% of people are cool with it. But
yeah.
like
But they're not on
even
mushrooms.
well, it's their recording. They're going to do
Yeah,
what they're going to do with it. But like for myself, when I was doing guided situations, I also wanted a recording about what I was doing for my own protection. And
yeah.
frankly, if you don't want safety for both of us, then maybe we're not meant to be together as client and
And
person
that's a
like that.
great point. Not just because you've found a therapist who understands psychedelics and is willing to do it, or just because you found a guide does not mean that's the right therapist or the right guide, right? Ask more questions. There's a lot more that would need to go into that to really make sure you are a good fit. Um,
Yeah.
and yes, people should be a little bit picky with finding the right guide, finding the right therapist.
I've gone to trainings, national trainings about psychedelics that are led by people who are reputable trainers like Bessel van der Kolk. Like
Oh,
they're talking about they're talking about psychedelics in our field. They're talking about helping people with this. I believe that we are 100% within our scope of work, especially in the harm reduction model, to help people with these experiences.
exactly.
Thank you. That is the clarification I wanted. If a therapist is thinking, could this risk my license to talk to somebody about their psychedelic experience? You're saying no.
Absolutely not. That would be like if somebody used drugs, which I specialize in the treatment of addiction. So if somebody came to me and told me that they've been using drugs, I run a syringe exchange. I know exactly what those people are doing with their syringes. And so does everyone else. And
Right.
it's legal and legitimate, and it's a public health intervention, and it's a social work intervention where I'm able to help people, and it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's the exact
So
same thing.
tell me this, Mindy. What is the difference between addiction, drugs that are causing addiction for your clients and dealing with that versus these psychedelic substances? How is it the same? Does it feel different to them? Talk me through those differences.
Totally different. And everybody knows it and everybody has known it since the beginning of drug use, dude, especially drug addicts. They're the first people that know that cannabis and psychedelics are not drugs. They don't count. And everybody knows it.
Now,
It's
not
obvious as
everybody
fuck.
knows it because
Everybody who
some of
uses
us,
drugs knows it. Everybody who
okay,
uses real drugs knows it.
you're right. But I'm going
Yeah.
to say those of us who went through the DARE program, which was every school student lumps them all together.
You
And
were
those
lied
who
to.
don't use substances lump it all together. So that's
That's
why I want
correct.
to parse it out. And let's talk.
Yes. And so that's why I say that people who have struggled with addiction, they know, and they've always known that cannabis and psychedelics are not at all the same. They're plant medicines. They're not drugs. They're not addictive. People do not go rob banks or rob their grandma to get a bowl of weed or to get some mushrooms. That just does not happen. It does not. And especially not psychedelics, dude. And in fact, when people are using hard drugs, they tend to stay far away from plant medicines because, well, cannabis it's a counteracting substance to a lot of those hard drugs. So people are like, I don't want that. And then psychedelics, dude, nobody wants to be smoking crack and then take mushrooms. What a horrible mix of energies, and everyone knows it. Everybody who uses drugs knows that. And it's only people who don't really know about drugs who believe the propaganda that has been pushed by our government over the last 100+ years, telling people all of this bullshit about substances overall, let alone the ones that are not harmful and that are non-addictive. Like for someone to say that cannabis or mushrooms or any psychedelic is addictive is just blasphemy. Blasphemy. It's horrible.
Yeah, like
Amy,
I'm gonna back that up 100%.
Thank
Like
you, Amy.
I, I think I think MDMA has a risk. I'm gonna put that out there as an asterisk that some people consider MDMA to be a psychedelic. I don't really. And I do think that there is risk of harm and addiction in some cases for people who use that drug. But
There are
my,
amphetamines in it. We
yeah,
should say that that's what the A stands for. There are amphetamines in it, which is a drug. Sorry,
yeah,
please.
you're good. No, you're good. And so, like, the idea that someone is going to want to do mushrooms every day, or that they're going to like lose their job because they can't stop doing mushrooms, that is ridiculous. Like,
it is
So funny. Even
ridiculous.
as you say it, it's
Yeah.
so funny, dude. People are like, I just can't stop tripping, dude. I can't go to work. It's like that would be so insane.
It's so much work. It's exhausting to do a mushroom trip. The idea of trying to do that even once a week
Yeah.
is, it really is exhausting to me. I'm like, I don't have energy to do
Right?
that kind of work constantly.
My goodness.
Well, and then I compare it to alcohol, which is legal, right? And people do destroy their lives with alcohol. They
Yeah.
do lose their jobs because of alcohol. Like, and nobody's going around being like, oh, alcohol, no, don't do it ever. Like, I mean, some people are, but not a lot of people are doing
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so this idea that like what the government says is legal is safe and vice versa, it's not held up by evidence.
Not at all. Drugs are not illegal because they're dangerous. They're dangerous because they're illegal. And that is an absolute fact. And with cannabis, at least cannabis is a coping skill, right? Like, I mean, there are people when they quit using cannabis, they get irritable and ornery or whatever. But that's not because they're going through withdrawals. It's because they don't have their coping skill anymore. That doesn't even happen with mushrooms. When we're talking about alcohol, people can die from those withdrawals. And that's a real thing. Like they're the most dangerous withdrawals you can go through. Those and benzodiazepines. When people are detoxing off heroin, they think they're going to die, but they're not. But people on alcohol absolutely can and will. And it's also the longest detox I've ever seen. When people come into treatment and they're like in their 60s and they've been a heavy alcoholic for a long time, it takes them like 60, 90 days to start to even come around. Like where there's been several cases where as a clinical team, we're sitting there watching these people in residential treatments. We have them all the time, right? And we're like, do they have early onset dementia or is this wet brain? Because the alcohol is so damaging to the brain and to the body. And that's just not the case with cannabis or psilocybin. I mean, any psychedelics, really. I mean, maybe if you were eating acid all the time, you could do something to yourself,
Yeah,
but
who wants to
the
do that?
plant-based medicines are
Who wants
different,
to do that?
and it doesn't work. You can only eat acid so many times in a row and then you don't trip anymore. And that's just a fact. I tried when I was younger. We all did. And I have no reason to hide that. Everybody knows I was a drug addict.
No, yeah,
But I
that's
was never addicted to acid. I was never addicted to mushrooms, but I sure will have a problem with meth if you give it to me.
yeah,
Totally different.
yeah.
And in
No,
fact,
that's
in the realm of addiction, there are a lot of people who, when they've gotten sober and they're like, I need to really do the work, I need to examine why I still keep going back to that. Psychedelics are a huge help for that. Like, I know a lot of people who've gone to places like Mexico or wherever and used ibogaine
yeah.
to get off of hard drugs, specifically opiates. And I've seen it be very successful for a lot of people. People have tried 100 other different ways. And we have to give, especially when people's lives are at stake, we have to give people every opportunity and every way they see fit to get better. And when you're dealing with people with addiction, those people know how to handle psychedelics too. So, like, I never have to worry about if they go out and trip by themselves and just do the work alone, they're going to be fine, because they have a lot of experience with substances, but they're also the people that really know how to dig deep because they've done it a lot. And they're like, I really got to get to the bottom of what this is about. And then I see people sometimes turn their whole lives around over finally figuring it out what it was they stuck a needle in their arm over all that time. We never know what psychedelics are going to do for somebody, and we should never keep that privilege away from anybody.
I want to put a fine pin on this, Mindy. So when you work with people who have substance issues, you absolutely are willing to talk about psychedelics with those people because it's a completely different thing.
Totally different thing. Yep. And
Okay.
I would never be concerned. I mean, as a person with almost 20 years in recovery and a professional that's done it for a very long time, I would never even be concerned that someone would abuse a psychedelic. Not
Okay.
at all. And I can't even imagine somebody like being under the influence of a psychedelic and going and getting their drug of choice. It's just, they're so incongruent in energy and everybody knows it. That uses substances. I guess everybody who uses substances knows those energies are so far apart, you don't want them together. And that's not just me, that's everyone.
Yeah.
If you talk to any drug addict, they would say the same thing as me.
Amy, are
So
you
professionals, professionals, like
professional drug addicts?
drug users. Yes, they're professionals. There's nobody who knows more about substance use than drug addicts. And we know this.
Amy, are you seeing similar things in your experience?
Yes, I do not get concerned. Someone comes and tells me that they've done mushrooms. I celebrate. I'm like, oh yeah, yay. We're gonna get somewhere. We're gonna go fast and it's
Yeah.
gonna stick. And I don't worry about like overuse or misuse of either LSD or mushrooms. I'll clarify that MDMA has its own risks and serotonin risks are there too. So sometimes that can be destabilizing for some people. But someone comes and tells me, and I believe this is shared by all of my colleagues, like people who hold strict religious views even still believe that some of these medicines are healing people because they're watching it happen right in front of their face. I cannot deny that my clients who do psychedelics versus my clients who don't, the clients who do psychedelics are far faster and have long lasting change far more than the clients who don't.
Yeah, I love that. You said it's faster and it's going to stick. I've never
Yeah,
put those two together. But that's exactly right.
love it.
Yes. Have you ever found, Sarah, let me ask you, like as a guide, like, so have you found people who are not psilocybin resistant that just want to take some huge, huge dose? Have you seen, well, one, have you had them do that? But then two, have you seen like more return from a trip? Like, because I feel like when you're full on tripping
Yeah.
balls, you are tripping balls and it doesn't get any more tripping balls, you know?
No,
And so
I
I'm just
have.
wondering, do you see them get
Yeah.
more from those larger doses?
I actually see a difference. I'm not going to say they're getting more. What I say is they are getting, it's a longer trip, much
Yeah.
longer, right? Because they're in it longer. So they're getting more insights. They're having different experiences. Um, I've never, in all of my research, I have actually never found a single instance where somebody has overdosed on mushrooms.
Yeah, it doesn't
So,
happen.
so my feeling is, yes, if something's calling to you, let's do it smart, let's do it safe, but I'm okay to experiment with larger doses. I understand what you're saying. At some point, the return, why are you doing this? What are you getting out of it? But I've seen some really beautiful 10 to 20 gram doses and people getting a great deal out of that, and certainly more than they're getting 3 to 5 grams. And I will also
Right.
say these are generally people that are this is early in their experience, because I also find if they take a large dose early on, small doses can get them there moving forward. And
Interesting.
so you take a lot to start with, but then you take 3 to 5 grams, and your brain is like, oh, we know where you want to go. And they take
Yeah.
you right there, with very little in your
Yeah.
system. And so that is what I have found. But again, everything I do is anecdotal. I'm not a researcher. I'm not, I can't speak to uh systemic uses of this.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if I'm going to like say what a therapeutic dose is, I think a therapeutic dose is something between 1.5 to 5. I think that that's when you can have therapeutic interventions in your experience. Again, this varies for person to person.
Sure.
5 and up, I believe you are in an internal experience. You are inside your body. You need a safe space and a safe space holder, but I don't know that you're going to get a lot of chatting as much as you're going to get bursts of information that come in, go, and aren't necessarily connected. So I believe there is a place for holding high dosage experiences, but from my experience, talking and integrating well on the substance happens at the lower doses more.
I actually agree with you on that. And I will say, I just give them different names. I say 1 to 4 is what I call a social dose, where you can look outward. You're talking to people, you're integrating with nature, you're having, a group experience. It can look a lot of ways. You just your partner, one on one, but then, yes, if you want that, what I call a therapeutic experience is inward. And I understand why you're saying it, you're giving it a different definition. Since I'm not a therapist, I'm like, do the inward work so we can send you to your therapist. So I call that a therapeutic dose, anything 5 or higher, because it is inward work. And that's what people come to me for, is they want that bigger inward dose so that we can, break it all down and send them back with a number of things to unpack.
I think that there isn't a right or wrong way to do these medicines. There is this results in this and this results in that, and none of those things are better than the other. And so I would say that any way that you're communing with these medicines, you can expect mind expansion, you can expect thought processes that change, and the more that you provide safety for yourself in those experiences and then integration for yourself, hopefully with a professional, that they will be successful for you in your mental health journey.
And I think that's a big part of what a guide does, a therapist does, is where these things feel big, and until you've spent a lot of time in those spaces, it isn't always easy to know what's real and what's not, right? So having somebody give you some guardrails and some things to help you stay grounded in reality, then it's easier to go, okay, I get how this works. And then, it doesn't take very many experiences before you're very experienced and you go, okay, I know what's real, I know what's not.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a big part of my work as people, excuse me, as people are entering the space, is to help them have autonomy in the space and, understand what's real and what's not.
I have to just say really quick, one thing about that is when this brings us to this point of like when people have mental health issues, people are already bordering on a psychotic disorder, people already have some delusions in their life, right? These are things that can push those people right into a spot that is just absolutely dangerous for them.
I think you're absolutely right on that, and you're not alone in thinking that. So,
Thank God.
Well, and I will say for people who have strong dissociative features in their life, psychedelics might not be a good idea for them until they can bring themselves more grounded into less dissociated experiences.
yeah.
So I think having having an understanding about what is your mental health status right now. Do does a licensed professional think that this is a good idea for you? And why is a reason that I think people should do when they're preparing for these experiences. Even if you want to meet with them a couple of times, you don't have to go long-term therapy, but someone who says, yeah, you've got the things it takes for like this deep dive experience into your psyche.
Yeah.
Or maybe it would be good to wait a little while and discover these things about yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means they can't be anti-psychedelic in the first place. This is where I think some people might struggle. It's important to find the right therapist for this so you can get honest feedback instead of their own personal bias about, oh, I don't think you need psychedelics, right? But I was also going to ask you a question, Amy. Do you ever find that people who struggle with dissociation, do you ever see them be able to get grounded and be mindful and be present when they're utilizing psychedelics?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, I
I
was just
think
wondering if that was
it's just,
like, see that as a
well,
thing.
understanding that memories for people with dissociative features, memories are cloudy. And if you
Mhm.
get a memory download in this experience, how, once again, how does a non-professional know how to deal with that? They
Yeah,
don't.
true.
And so to understand how to bring someone out of dissociation, to bring them to groundedness, to do all of those things.
But this is yet another reason why guides and therapists should be doing deep, wonderful collaboration,
I
I
you
agree.
know, so that we can help people learn grounding techniques to help bring somebody back or to help them follow that flight of ideas to wherever it needs to go to get to whatever they're trying to get to. You should be open to collaboration because these are people's lives and well-being we're talking about. And if you've been trained in ethics, then you would know that. but guides are not trained in ethics, so they don't know,
No,
and these are important things to like, we get to collaborate in together, and I feel like guides can inform a lot of things too to therapists who haven't had those experiences with the person. So it's like, dude, this is how they are when they're with me. This is like really different. Like, I see this other side of them. And those are things I might never get to see. And what a gift it is to get to share that and do it together to help change someone's life. Like, that's why I do what I do, because there's nothing more rewarding than seeing people just soar beyond everything they ever thought they could be. And the more people you have on your team cheerleading and bringing you up to that higher vibration, the more likely you are to get there. And the happier I am, the more rewarded I feel.
absolutely.
I also think this is why I'm going to circle back to the co-counseling model, is that if you're both trained, both people, that the person holding space and the person who's taking the space, if you're both trained in the same model, then you can know what to expect from that guiding experience. You can know what questions are going to be asked, because they're just like questions like, tell me more, and like, where do you feel that in your body? Really basic questions, but that are not like feedback or suggestions or advice giving. There's nothing like that in those spaces. And so I think from a co-counseling standpoint, that you're not actually doing any guiding.
Yeah.
You're having them be their own guide. You're doing the recording and the witnessing.
Yeah, I love that. I actually think there's some power in that. And I think there's also something really good about common language, which
Mhm.
is anyone going through that as the same program, you're going to learn, I see that with people going through DBT. Once you have a common language, it just helps when someone is dysregulated, right? And you're just saying a couple of words and it's helping that person get grounded again because it's a shared experience, a shared language. So, yeah, I think there's something really important in that too, Amy. I think that's great.
So I sat with the toad once with someone we know.
Okay.
And it was so overwhelming for me. Like physically, I was like, God, dude. And I just had to remind myself to just breathe and breathe and breathe through it. But you know what it did for me? And I didn't really like the effects of that substance very much. But what it did do for me is it literally reset my fight or flight in my brain. And like for at least a couple of years after I sat with the toad, I myself did not have those. Like there's just little things that'll happen in a day. Like somebody could say something little, you could smell something, you could just see something, and it feels like a punch in your gut, and you have your nervous system has a response to it because you have trauma associated with it. And like when that's happened so many times, sometimes the system just has those responses for like really no reason. And when I did the toad, it reset that for me. And I did not have that happen to me anymore for at least 2 years after doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was life changing. It was life changing. And it also made it like, because during that experience, like toward the end, because I felt like it was going on forever for me. And I have a struggle with like people, like, it's weird. I'm a hugger, but I don't like people cuddling me, or especially not males being like super close to me. And I was able to call on my friend and ask him to please just come be with me. And he just wrapped himself around me and just held me. And it healed so many, it'll actually make me cry. It healed like so many little parts inside of me that I never even knew needed to be healed. It made me feel safer than I have maybe ever felt in my life. And it had huge impacts on me in so many ways. But the one that was like the most profound was like that I didn't have that and that feeling anymore in my nervous system. I hate that feeling in my nervous system. I hate it.
Wow.
And to have that be reset, but then to also feel safe with like my male friend, just holding me and healing those parts of me that did not feel safe with men. It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, it
I
is.
might have to drop an F bomb in there because it is. It's one of the most moving experiences of my life.
Thank you for sharing that, Mindy. That's lovely. Amy, do you have anything like that to
Can you
share?
repeat your question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have a client or a friend, a personal experience where maybe someone new to psychedelics or, and where you've seen a change, you've seen an impact that this has made on them.
I guess, yeah, I've definitely seen multiple clients, and I'll speak the thing again that the clients who use psychedelics just do it faster and far more effectively than the ones who aren't interested or know about it, I don't necessarily advertise it to people. I wait for people to bring it to me. But I think in terms of change and growth, I can think of a few specific clients who went from having like PTSD symptoms that were debilitating to
Hmm.
being able to function in the world because their trauma was processed in a way that made sense to them finally. Something that is not necessarily allowed by just talk therapy, even the beauty of EMDR or other things, nothing matches the changes in the brain that happen with psychedelics.
Yep.
So I would say that fundamental changes in the brain and the thinking processes happen with psychedelics, and they don't happen in other places.
And we also have to mention that in microdoses, because psilocybin goes right to the part of the brain that produces anxiety. And so I have seen people have crippling anxiety be cured from microdosing psilocybin without
Cool.
even like other therapy, even necessarily. Like it's because their brain, I guess, is just way too overactive in that part or something. I don't know. But psilocybin does calm that part of the brain. I've seen people have insane responses to lifelong anxiety
And depression. I would say that
and depression. Yep.
people who are considering SSRIs, I like ask them, what do you know about psilocybin? Like friends, not clients. What do you know about psilocybin? Because microdosing that has been shown to be just as effective as an SSRI without like long-term dependence. That's the
Hmm.
other thing that I would
No
notice.
side effects.
Yeah,
Yep. Quarter gram of mushrooms in a capsule. I've always said that if there were such thing as a happy pill, it is a quarter gram of psilocybin in a capsule, and I'll stand by that.
I,
Like,
I
I
will
don't
too.
have the
And
research to back it, but I have the lived experience and the experience of others around me to say that I believe that it is a happy pill.
I love that.
well, I don't have the memory enough to tell you the research, but there is research to back it. There is research now
See,
that says that it's just as effective, if not more effective. So
I
Okay.
love
look it
this.
up. Google it, everyone.
Look
You
it
have
up.
that skills.
That's
Okay,
right. Google it.
I think we're kind of wrapping up, but I want to ask another question. And this one could take a little time. If we talked about how to prepare your clients for experience, but let's say you've prepared them, whether you know it or not, they've had their experience and now they've come back to you with pages of notes, either that they took or their guide took for them. Talk about how do you build an integration plan? How do you integrate these items? Because if you're not integrating it, well, I'll say it this way. I often say psychedelics can be life changing, but only if you do the work to change your life. So, how do
Love
you
that, Sarah.
help them change their life? What does that look like from a therapist point of view? Amy, can you go first on this?
Sure. I think I'm going to back up what Mindy said earlier, that this is just therapy 101, right? Taking insights that we gain from books we've read or from other things that we've gotten, and then we integrate it into our lives through tiny behavior changes over time. Like, oh, maybe just talk to yourself a little nicer, or like in parts work with your little child parts. Work with those protective parts that you maybe learned more about in that psychedelic experience. But the use of metaphor and imagery and like archetypes, that is really therapy 101, in my opinion. And so it's not like this foreign process to take the things in a psychedelic experience, similar to reading a book or any other thing, and integrating it into your life.
Beautiful. So,
Yep.
not nearly as long as I thought.
My answer is even shorter, Sarah.
Say
All
it.
I'm going to say is that those people just brought me their treatment plan written out. They just brought me their treatment plan. It's gotten a little longer. We have more goals we want to work on, but they just brought me what they want to work on. Now I'm going to assign the interventions that we're going to use to attack each one of these things, which means building skills around them, healing what's underneath them, making those little behavior changes and, what we want to do. They just literally wrote their own treatment plan, a very thorough one.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's awesome. So I want each of you to take a few minutes, share anything you feel like still needs to be shared, anything we didn't cover, anything, do you have advice for, I guess we've kind of talked about therapists, but any advice to people out there, anything like that? Mindy, I'm going to have you go first on this.
Just be careful who you deal with. Deal with safe people. Unfortunately, there are so many predators in the psychedelic space. I hate to say that, but it's true. And it's also really strange because some people, when they start utilizing psychedelics, especially when they first get introduced to them and they learn to pour the medicine or whatever, it's like one of the most egotistical
Yeah.
fields or groups out there. And when you're dealing with somebody with some kind of crazy ego, then you need to step back from that person, probably. All I would say is just like truly be careful. Like, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Do what feels comfortable for you. Remember that, the world of psilocybin is not the reality that we live in. And so it's important to be able to access that and then step back into where you really are. And when you're dealing with people who are always like, like, I don't know that they're really the people that are going to help you grow and learn that much. And you have every right to be picky, and you should not be paying thousands of dollars for someone to help you, someone to guide you, someone to provide you the medicine. None of those things cost thousands of dollars. And if people are charging you that, that's because they are predators, whether it be financial or otherwise. There are people who are sexual predators out there. And especially if you're someone who's coming from a very vulnerable space, like you're going through a faith crisis and you're leaving the church and you're, encountering egotistical males, you need to turn around and run. Like if you've had certain types of traumas, maybe you should look at working with, like, I mean, if you're a female and you have sexual trauma, I would really encourage you to seek out a female to do that work with. And there's just certain things you can do to protect yourself, but just don't let people take advantage of you. And if you're someone who is easily taken advantage of, you should seek out the guidance of people that are for sure safe. So ask around, don't be afraid. And if people get offended by that, then those are the people also that you need to stay away from.
Interesting. Thank you.
I
Uh,
would also encourage people to find their inner healer. I would encourage people to seek the inner healer that lives within them and sit in solitary. Record your own thoughts, witness your own experience. That can be a very powerful space. Have someone on call that you can call if you need to, or something like that, or someone in the next room. But sitting with yourself can be some of the most healing things because you don't have to put on a role or you don't have to put on a like anything. You're just there with yourself.
yeah.
And some of the most powerful experiences I've had were with myself and facing all of my shadow parts with all of my skills, with all of my healing parts, and using those things together. It is lovely when someone can prompt you or encourage you sometimes to move that way. But the powerful parts for me were doing it myself and seeing like, oh, I made it through. I'm my own healer. I'm the one I've been waiting for. And that was a really powerful experience for myself.
I love that, Amy. And
Okay.
I just want to point out, like, these kind of things, navigating psychedelics, like
Yes.
the trip journals, these things are available on Amazon, for health's sake. So if you are someone who can't find somewhere or you don't feel comfortable working with somebody else and you want to only access your inner healer, like you were talking about, Amy, because like I love to do that with psilocybin. I love to like go inside, and I call it meeting the mushrooms, and letting my inner self guide me. And if you're somebody who's looking for something like that, you don't need someone else to prompt you. You can sit and do work like that and take it right back to your therapist, like, so there's pathways in
Oh,
every direction.
and even if you can't access a therapist, there are resources out there to help you build skills, like you said, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, mindfulness, noticing the things that are in your mind. Those things can all be built for free. DBT is available for free. You can find it
Everywhere.
anywhere.
Yep.
And it's so I I have a personal belief, but also a group belief in that we celebrate no profits and no profits. And you get to decide what that means for you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
I love that. I love that, Amy.
I think we should be sharing mushrooms the way that we share zucchini in August. I
I
think
agree.
they're so cheap, they're so free. It
Yeah.
takes very little time, energy, and attention to take care of it like a significant amount.
Yeah,
and then go and give it to your friends and be like, be well, everyone.
that's
Like,
right.
what what are we doing when we're gatekeeping these things and creating power dynamics that are under money and that are under like telling people how to lead their lives and try to managing people's lives? How do we have an equal energy exchange? These are the kinds of things that I'm hoping to bring to our psychedelic communities, that we're not looking for someone to tell us how to leave our lives and profit on us or with us. And that's the way I feel about it.
Thank you, Amy. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say I want to include here, mushrooms specifically, but psychedelics, they teach us how to interact with the world a better way. And when mushrooms are telling people how their spouse needs to change or how other people in their life need to change, I think that's their ego talking. That's not the mushrooms. Mushrooms are telling you how you need to change, how you need to be better. It's not telling you how other people need to be better toward you. And it might clearly tell you someone is toxic for you and you need to remove yourself from that relationship, but you're not saying, hey, here's how the whole family needs to adjust to me. And that, I think, is if that's happening when someone's on mushrooms, that is a conversation they need to have with their therapist.
Yeah.
And their therapist, a good therapist, is going to start redirecting those thoughts, because those are not things that are coming from the mushrooms. That's just not what happens in a healthy experience.
Correct. So
Amy, feels like you have something to say.
I would love for us to create a safer network of people that say these people know how to hold trusted space, and then a trusted network of therapists who say these people understand their like psychedelic medicines. I think that would be a lovely thing that we could build as a community. I do think that the illegal parts of it make it hard for people.
It
So
makes it, well, these things do not have to happen in the jungles of Peru.
yeah,
They can happen in our own homes and probably should a lot of the time. And I'm not going to say should, that's the wrong word, but they absolutely can. And honestly, that's one of my preferred places is my home worship. I
yeah,
have some of my very best experiences with my partner in my personal space and or alone in my personal space. And yeah, I'm very careful who I expand that circle to include because I do count these as sacred spaces. They are healing, they're important. For me, they're creative, they're spiritual, and I don't want to share them with just everybody, just anybody. All right, any final thoughts, ladies?
just grateful for the work that both of you do. And Amy, thank you for being a fellow professional that holds high valued standards, ethics, care for the people that we're supposed to care about. Thank you for being that kind of a therapist. I appreciate it deeply. And Sarah, I always love every single thing about you and about Steve and about everything you do. And you know that.
I do. I know.
You guys are my heroes. I love you.
Love you too.
it does feel nice to hear another professional that is leaning more toward safety than toward the like, how can I be a psychedelic therapist?
Right? I feel like I was kind of a psychedelic therapist from the time I was 13. So like it's time to be safe about it.
There
Yes,
was a time when before my evolution to divine assembly kinds of things, there was a time when I was one of those therapists because I hadn't evolved. I hadn't given some of these things consideration, and I'll be grateful for my own evolution, but I believe this is the better, safer way when we encourage people in this way.
well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Sarah.